Thank you, Mr. Isa. Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for allowing me to participate in this subcommittee hearing and to the rest of the subcommittee for allowing with the unanimous consent. And thank you, Mr. Sopko, for being here today. I spent late 2013 to mid 2015 in Afghanistan, flew in and out of Kabul's airport and saw those Italian
Ah,
G222s sitting
yeah,
there gathering dust, and then one day they were all in a pile of scrap metal. $549 million worth of investment gone down. And I appreciate your testimony and all of your reporting, which, as my colleague Ms. Jacobs said, some of us were reading those. Um, I guess, you mentioned, the need for Congress to reprise its oversight capabilities in this area. And I guess, what do you attribute to the failure of Congress to really ask those tough questions, or even if those tough questions were being asked, for any action to have been taken on behalf of them over the past, 2 decades, but probably more acutely last decade?
Congressman, you're pulling me way beyond my brief. I do Reconstruction. I don't, and in Afghanistan, I don't look at congressional foibles or prerogatives.
Understood, sir.
It's yeah. So, but I mean, when I retire, maybe I'll write a book about that. But I mean, it's it is difficult to change, and I think you appreciate this. Once you start a war, it is hard to change it. I mean, it is a slippery slope, and it keeps going down, down and down and down. And there are more and more people who are involved in it, and everybody thinks just one more cycle, just another year, another 6 months, we're going to turn the corner. That is the difficulty. It's the difficulty of changing a ship of state as it's moving down that river. How do you get it to turn? I mean, it's almost like we saw what happened when that big ship in the Suez just turned a little and it got stuck. That's the difficulty. But Congress has to do effective oversight. The IGs do, but by the time we get there, the body is dead and cold, and it's maybe removed, and all we got is a chalk outline of an audit or a program that's dead. You are there in the beginning, and the congressional committees have to do that. And it was President Wilson who said the role of oversight for Congress is as important, if not more important, than the role of legislating. So I'm biased toward the oversight.
Well, I appreciate that. And I will direct this next question to be a little bit more within your scope. Obviously, you've gone through a
Okay.
litany of the failures that have been witnessed of fraud, waste, abuse, mismanagement. Um, you mentioned earlier the fuel surcharge and those kind of corruption components. We've seen other reports on, the extent to which, extortion rackets or, security forces or security services, private security services, were essentially set up as ways of getting more money out of the US, creating security threats and then profiting from it. Did you ever, in your reporting, come at an estimate of how much of the Taliban's funding may have been through US funds that were being either, um, extorted or skimmed or bribed or otherwise?
I don't think we did. There were estimates, but I'm afraid to give them now because I think they could have been classified.
Okay.
But we assumed the Taliban got about a third of their money through either the corruption or counter or narcotics, and then a third through taxing and a third through donations. But that's the best I can say at this point. I can try to get back to you, Congressman, if you want, in the committee on that. But I'm afraid to go much further.
I appreciate that. And I want to end on a positive note. So your reports kind of showed many of the failures. At any time in your investigations and in your work, did you find success stories that you can share?
Absolutely. I mean, I think there were successes with healthcare. There were successes with education. There were successes with mortality rate among Afghans in general, not as much as it was exaggerated by the former administrator of USAID some time ago, but there were successes in all of those areas. The National Solidarity Program was a great success. I think some of the State Department programs supporting a free and independent media, there were small programs, they were a success. Some of the money, and again, these were small programs supporting civil society organizations, were a success. So there were successes, but overall, there were a lot of failures.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Sopko, and I think we should learn from the successes and make sure we learn even more from the failures. And thank you, Mr. Chairman. With that, I yield back.